here. And Tom, just to clarify, because you referenced this Atlantic article, for those that have not seen it, it was one of the journalists in the Atlantic, one of those that have been
Emily
very, very clear that certain people who chose not to comply with certain mandates, that they needed to be unpersoned, deplatformed, ideally locked into camps. And now, after the fact, when it turns out that the science lied and wasn't the science after all, this person wants amnesty for everyone that wanted to lock up everyone else. Just to clarify that. Of course, I would also like to say that if it had turned out that the science actually was science and that their side was right, I don't think that they would have wanted amnesty for the people that they wanted to look up. But yeah,
it was a specific part of the science, not all of it. So let's be clear about that.
Yeah. It was a particular part of the science that was scientific.
And that was promoted, and that part that turned out not to be true was promoted heavily. So that's
well, and it's not just that. You also have had a lot of people wishing death upon people, canceling people, getting people, you know, thrown out of businesses. People's businesses getting shut. Thank you, Culture.
Sorry.
Yeah, but
other people's businesses and stuff being shut down. And what they want is, you know, let's let bygones be bygones. You know, it's like, no, that's not how this fucking works, right? You have destroyed the world, and now you just want a mulligan on it. That's not how this is going to go. And says, I've never seen this in my lifetime where we've had people's lives destroyed. Okay, like this.
Right, but the celebrities didn't do it. This is
they played a big hand in it.
They had a very big hand in it. They, not personally, but by way of being influencers and by pushing a certain narrative.
Well, in the end, the governments make the decision.
Full weight behind it.
In the end,
they use the celebrities. That's the thing.
Yeah, they use the celebrities. I mean, all of this is coming to light now that, you know, and we've always seen the liberal toolkits out there in the world.
This is one thing that has come out during the reign of Elon Musk already. Culture, I don't mean to interrupt you. Sorry.
No, you hit it spot on. They could not have said it better. I mean, it was brought to light. It's part of the video I did today. I mean, I'm probably going to get YouTube hating on me some more because you know, I'm talking about techno-fascism. So that's not, you know, going to be a popular subject. But the minute you have the government invested, and it's not just the U.S. government, the governments around the world, including, you know, those north of whatever, you know, line you just delineated there, Paul.
49th parallel.
Thank you. Yeah. You know, that government, more than many, took away a whole lot of stuff and did a lot of things that would be considered human rights violations, and, you know, might put you up in front of the Hague during the course of you know, the events that happened for the pandemic.
Let me put it another way. You have one side that was trying to claim that words were basically violence, and you had another side, you know, who basically, you know, just wanted to live, and them not allowing it to happen. That's what we've had in the last 2 years. And I know where you're coming from, Paul, but I'm not about to let one side get away with what they've done. I used to be a lefty. And they left me behind.
Sure.
In the last few years. I'm not necessarily a righty now either, but I'm a centrist. But where I'm at is like, no, there needs to be accountability for what's happened in the last 2 years.
Ultimately, the challenge is not what people believed, but the commitment to their belief. So the facts can change over time as new information comes out, but people's commitments, that's where they become emotional. That's where they collect with groups. And so there's how can I say it? Even if you had the facts, the discussions were often irrational.
That's exactly right. That's the point right there. Facts were completely left to the side in the name of the science. And the one bit right there, and that was the most crucial bit, which was outright anti-science, but still referred to as the science. And I'm very, very glad that I was not in a place where that doctrine ruled.
And that doctrine was, and people misuse that term, and I even commented on it. I think the best way to describe it is a favorite YouTuber of mine, Sabina Hassenfelder, who's a physicist.
I love her.
Said that explaining science, it said all science will tell you is that a running liquid on a downed power line conducts electricity. Science does not tell you not to pee on it.
Yeah, I saw that video. That was a great video that everyone should be watching.
And that is the best explanation, and that is what was abused by governments. And there's no people more ignorant about science, medicine, or whatever than politicians.
Or celebrities. Sadly, they were the ones that were the loudest about it.
I got all my inoculations from celebrities. I demanded it. That there's just no other thing I would do. No other way I would get my vaccines was except from a qualified celebrity.
So. All I know is when they were singing the Imagine thing, I was sitting here thinking, imagine if there was no government, and imagine we didn't have to deal with this bullshit.
Actually apologized for that video.
I know some of them have. Honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure if John Lennon, he's like, if he was alive, I'm not even sure if he would have been okay with that.
Yeah, so my point is people are caught up with the commitment now, and I don't know where the truth is.
And he was a raging wokester back before woke was a thing, right?
Like, yeah, I was about to say John Lennon, he would have been in front of the line calling for everyone to go to the camps.
You sure? I don't know, because that's the thing, is some of these old school progressives, a lot of them weren't down with some of this shit, and I use John Waters as a prime example, right? Like
people with money, people who want to pay less taxes. One of the funniest routines I ever heard was Chappelle's, where he said, normally I would be against Trump, but I'm making a shit ton of cash now and saving on taxes, so I'm having a hard time.
I think John Lennon would have said the same thing John Waters said, and that was that he said before it was the other side trying to silence me, now it's this side. Yeah. You know, and that's really basically what John Waters said. But Chad Rupnerine says the amnesty thing is like someone starting a fight with you and then trying to call some timeout when they're losing. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's it's worse than, well, it's even worse than that in some cases, if you ask me. So, and yeah,
it was it has been a real trial. The 2 years, it's been bad for everybody.
Yeah.
I it's one of those things where amnesty, the problem with calling for an amnesty is that you're playing a side as opposed to just let everything cool down, let everybody reconnect, forgive each other on a one-to-one basis, and then move on.
It's not. You're also admitting guilt and culpability by asking for amnesty.
Correct. That's my point.
Yeah, but you're doing it without asking for forgiveness, which
that's true too.
All of these people should be begging for right now.
Exactly right. You know, I mean, on one hand, Fauci, maybe deserves to be pillared, but on the other hand, like I'm a systems guy. If you don't follow some kind of process, then it's very difficult to fix. So if everybody is doing something different constantly all the time, there's pretty much nothing you can do to figure out what the better course of action has to be. And that's kind of what I felt happened, over the, let's call it the COVID years, if I'm allowed to say that. Andre, did I just...
I don't disagree with that approach. The other thing, though, is that we were, not so much we, but too many politicians were relying on a man who botched the AIDS crisis by doing the exact same tactic then as he did.
Right.
Like Fauci is horrible. He should have been expunged and expelled and imprisoned for what he did in the 80s. That's in my opinion, because I had family friends that died because of the practices that he talked about in the 80s that I never got to know more than being a couple of years old. So yeah, like that's just the case. But I think the other part too is that we it wasn't just it's also a reflection on ourselves, because we as people elected those representatives to be in charge of certain things, and they did not respect at least the majority's request for more investigation, more more due diligence on.
Well, I think
what's
the
going
bigger
on.
problem, and again, I don't want to get too deep into this. I think the bigger issue here is that now that we actually have some ideas of how things could have went had, things been done differently. We have different countries that did different things different ways. And now we have an idea of what the best route of this could have been for. The problem is you had the vilification of those who were technically right. That's the problem you have, is instead of people actually having a conversation at that time, they shut down the conversation. We are a result of that. We are tap dancing around the fucking subject right now for that very motherfucking reason, because we are not allowed to have a conversation about it, because God forbid you said something that questioned the almighty you-know-who.
But part of the challenge is the motivation of the questioning. So the questioning could have been, I just hate those effing.
It could very well have been, but
and that is that would have been their entire motivation. So how do you have a discussion around that? That's my point, is that it's not about the facts. It's about the people's commitments to the facts. It's the commitment side that has been the problem.
I saw it in basically what we're talking about here, and the whole argument taking place right on real time with Bill Maher. Bill Maher broke it all down, and then you had what's his face, Neil deGrasse Tyson,
right? I saw
who was trying to make the argument for science and all this shit, and he's like, "Well, we don't know. He's like, "Bullshit. Yes, we know. Here's the answers." And Neil still tried to tap dance around it. So this to me is why they're trying to get this amnesty right now, is because they are cornered. And they know they're fucking cornered. And there's a lot of people who don't want to get sued. There's a lot of people who don't want to admit they were wrong. And they did a lot of shit to a lot of people that they don't want to be done to them.
So what? I'd love to pitch in on this.
I don't know what to say.
As a brown man, United Farm Workers is a union that's been around since the 1950s. It was founded by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta. Okay, they've had their problems with contracts and deals, but over the decades. But basically, what they were asking for, always to this day, is a fair wage and livable conditions, right? So, for the last 2 years, a new bill in California that would have given the union more leverage, let's say, in their dealings. 2 times it was vetoed by that MFer Gavin Newsom. Okay, and let me tell you, there was nobody more in bed with him than those leaders.
So what was his motivation?
Okay,
hair gel.
So it wasn't until there was a massive protest, a sit-in at the Capitol this year, just last month, that this guy, he was gonna, for the 3rd year, veto. At the same time, homeboy had his wineries running and working, expanding during the last 2 years. So with all due respect, Chato, I love you, but I do not have any room to forgive. What I'll do is I'll vote them out. Right. And, and I'm going to call out too. Hey, that's the same dude you were in bed with. It had to take a sit in. It had to take a national recognizing, what is going on for him to look bad. See, these guys don't like looking bad. That's why they're asking for this amnesty. Okay. All right. You can ask for that. I'm not going to give it to you. We're going to have a discussion, because I lost my business during the last couple of years. I had nothing. That's why I'm here on YouTube.
And you're very handsome.
And I'm not the only one. And it has nothing to do with color. It has to do with small businesses in California. That homeboy open, shut down, like I don't know what. These are, and then it's the tactic on the left to attack. It's back me up or else. Support this or else. You know what?
Sure.
No amnesty.
Oh, I'm not forgiving anybody
personally, bro.
Yeah, no. And don't get me wrong. I'm just exhausted, and I don't know what to do anymore. Things are a little bit different in Canada, but nobody is more sanctimonious than the left.
And hey, listen, I'm full disclosure. I'm from the left.
Yeah, me too. I've always been there.
The last
And
2
many
years have been such an awakening for me on so many fronts.
I've never been so purple in all my life. I'll tell you that right
I
now.
will say this, Paulie, you can believe he's from the left because he's dressed like a Canadian right now.
Yeah.
How y'all doing? I got my American.
They actually say he
flag
looks just more like a Texan, but yeah, either way, it works.
Well, he's got the denim
Anyways.
jacket, he's got the baseball cap, he's got that beautiful Canadian style mustache.
Then we got Marksman of 117B who says, for the whole accountability, Paul is right, but you all missed it. They aren't talking to society. They are talking to their friends and family. Well, who are a lot of the same people? That's the thing you got to remember. There are a lot of the same people. We're all related and we know these people somehow in some way. It's not just, that's the thing, is we have our own friends and family that did this kind of stuff too.
Hey, listen, over the last 2 years, a lot of friendships were broken, and so were a lot of families. I mean, forget about any kind of forgiveness now. There's a lot of healing that needs to be done just, from the ongoing crap that we went through over the last 2 years.
Yeah, and I think that because of that, there has to be some kind of public acknowledgement and some kind of public accountability.
I agree.
And then it can trickle from there to the private forgiveness, where within families and within close-knit communities, that is where, you have to forgive your neighbor, you have to forgive your brother, you have to forgive your sister. Because you're really going to let that destroy you forever? Absolutely. But the people that were instrumental in creating that divisiveness in the first place, those with huge platforms that used them to incite, those that used their platforms to shut down legit facts as disinformation, while actually spreading disinformation and propaganda that they maybe thought were factual, but which in retrospect turned out not so much.
Yeah, and then
those that used their platforms maliciously to that end, there can be no forgiveness. For that, there needs to be accountability.
The not forgiveness part, Andre, is the people who obfuscated, kept information, and it turned out to be worse than anyone anticipated. And what do you deal with that? That's the problem. If they were truthful about the quote unquote the bad news, let's call it just bad news for the sake of this discussion, on an ongoing basis, we wouldn't be here right now.
Yeah.
But because they choose to lie from a corporate perspective, from a money perspective, or a political
control perspective, actually.
From a what?
A control perspective.
A
lot of businesses that acquiesce to that because they got more control over their staff than they ever had before.
That's right. And they love control. And now that it has been opened up, now we're more angry than we would have been otherwise.